Journeys Ahead, Draft 2, Chapter 2, Cursed Gifts, written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3! With a sharp strum of a crystal blue pick and a flick in talented fingers, the sound of a soothing guitar's tune suddenly began to ring out across an old rooftop, till its sound waves gently traversed below to a field of dirty streets. As cars drove by, the sound of their tires and exhaust sounded to almost sync with the guitar's beat above, in turn motivating the one who is playing the very instrument to continue on in a more gleeful way. Atop the building's ledge, with legs dangling off the side, sat a teenage girl who had only just turned 15 a few months ago. This girl bopped her head up and down while she strummed away at her tangy-colored instrument. This girl, in the heat of the moment, was feeling in tune with her own rhythmic motions and city-wide sound surroundings. The mysterious girl held a wide, brace-filled smile on her face as she continued to play and flick at the strings that rested within her very hands. With each pull and tap of the guitar's thin wires, the girl couldn't help but feel that she was making everything okay in that moment. Life, as well as herself, felt at peace, at least in her own mind. As the girl continued playing the music for a non-existent audience, she gently turned her head to the right and focused her eyes upon a canister of spray paint that had been laying beside a bag of personal belongings. The can itself was cast in a soft pumpkin color reflective metal coating, signifying that it held a chrome liquid within. Upon the can's smooth exterior reflection, the girl couldn't help but stare back at her own soul, a being who, even that moment feeling great, was truthfully a bit lost on the inside. Her hair was long and curvy near its end tips, which gave the impression that it was like an ocean wave, splashing up from the back of her scalp. This hair was unique to the girl's. Unlike most others, this set of hair was emanating a beautiful warm glow, as a mix of oranges, reds, and yellows swirled within it. As a cherry on top of its already awe-inspiring beauty, sparkling glimmers of stardust gently fell and fizzled from her locks, left those who gazed upon the girl wonder what kind of hair care routine she used. Yet, nobody outside of the few others knew what it really was. The girl was special. Very special. Below her hair, the girl's skin tone was a striking grayish stone brown, looking to complement the magma shade of color above. Her head was also smooth and round in form, being attached to a face full of freckles and a set of bright and beautiful orange eyes, layered in snow-white irises. Atop her head, the guitarist wore a bright turquoise beanie, with an added musician pin on its side. And below on the left side of her cheek rested a band-aid, having been placed there from the night prior after a little skirmish. Round her torso, the girl wore a bright orange sweater that had been slightly draped over a skirt, one with the same shade of turquoise as her beanie. Beneath it, she wore a pair of shorts that were followed up by a pair of socks and red-pink boots over her feet. The last thing of note was the crystallized guitar pick that was normally around their throat, but this time, being used to conduct music from the guitar. This crystallized piece of music making was a gift from the girl's father, a person the girl cared about very much. Etched into the back of this little piece of jewelry was the musician's name. Jida Woods, it said. My little harmony. Losing focus to a little pop, Jida's eyes opened wide as a familiar, rage-inducing sound erupted from her fingertips. Narrowing her fall-colored gaze downwards, she couldn't help but scowl at the guitar in her small hands. It was one of the strings. It had broken off mid-tune and now dangled in a spiraling, slinky-looking taunt. Ugh, seriously? Again? Jida groaned as she propped her instrument up on her knees and examined the damage. I just had knock and caught fixed this last week. Did I burn it again? Jida questioned herself while looking at her hands, seeing the slightest hint of a yellow-orange hue fading away into her skin. Her gift, as some of the people she knew liked to call it. Yep, Of course, I burn it again. She bluntly said to no one but herself, as her eyes furrowed downwards into a displeased expression. Slowly standing up with a groan, Jida took her guitar and latched it onto her back. Over her sweater, she wore a large carrier strap that went up and around her left shoulder and right side waist. On its back end, there was a magnetic lock that would seal the instrument down. The carrier sash had been designed by the ones she had just named. Her cousin, a man by the name of Knock Rogers, and his good friend and business partner, Cot Rivers. Hopefully they'll have stronger string this time. Maybe pure wire will do the trick. These toasty fingers keep ruining my flow. Jida thought and contemplated as she gathered her bag of belongings and swung it over her shoulder. Alright, it's getting late. I should probably get back to the shop. I still gotta tell Knock about my plan. He's gonna be so upset. I can probably convince him though, right? Before another word could leave her mouth, a sharp sound came from below within the streets of the city known as Aurora. Turning her head, Jida only caught the glimpse of a speeding vehicle racing its way across the road. It was a big and bulky van that had quickly screeched around a block corner before disappearing behind a set of buildings, with money trailing behind it. Following close came a set of police cars that were in hot pursuit. Their lights buzzed on and off with an ear-splitting siren following after. It was a good old Aurora City chase. Something familiar and annoying for the people in the area. But for Jida, it was always her calling to action. With her eyes perking, a small smile began to grow upon the guitarist's freckled-up face. This was a similar giddy feeling that had entered her gut before, as she proceeded to then slowly take off her guitar and move her sweater around her body. "About time there was some action around here!" she exclaimed while dropping the sweater, her skirt, leaving her in a tank top and shorts. Turning back and kneeling down to the instrument she had been playing, Jida gently took hold of its front and clicked a set of hatches that were upon its rounded corners. Then, like a wooden box in someone's attic, the guitar opened up into the moonlight. Within its confines was a bundled up and raggedy cloak with a pair of pants, both donned in the colors of low maroon reds. Quickly, Jida took the large chunks of cloth out and draped them around her body, looking like an excited kid getting ready for a vacation day at school. Unraveling down and covering her body came the full form of this cherry-shaded cloak. Its outline both glistened and reflected within the dying light over the horizon, as Jida swiftly yanked its hood over her head. Once concealed inside its shadows, the only visible features from her face were the guitarist's two orange glowing eyes. Quickly turning her head, Jida peered out and over her home, the city of Aurora, or rather, one half of it. The south side, as she and many others referred to it as. The lowly side, the non-fancy side, that was left to the poor as livelihood scraps. Standing upon the roof of the building, Jida slowly closed her orange glowing eyes and focused. She listened for the distant sounds of sirens. Further, she quietly muttered, getting a slight inclination of where the chase had gone. The wind around her body began to swirl, like a mysterious chill that would whoosh across a small town in an autumn's day. Counting to 3, Jida took in one long breath, and then exhaled with that same count. In and out, she said inside. 1, 2, 3, and out. As these exercises took place, Jida's body began to suddenly react. Her skin had started to glow. Starting from the tips of her fingers, the outline of shimmering yellow lines began to creep up and around her skin. Beneath, this soft surge of energy illuminated the cloak to look almost like a dimly lit lantern in a summer's night. Not far off, Jida muttered as the darkness within her vision began to illuminate into something more. Through her closed eyes, Jida saw swirls and ignitions of light, creating an almost illuminated version of the city she called home, now being filled and overpopulated with tiny, shimmering stars, with the colors of orange, yellow, and red. She then saw it off in the far distance. Almost like lightning cracking to life was the outline of the escape van, casted in a red stardust, while the police cruisers were ignited with sharp white glows amidst the oranges and yellows everywhere else. 2 miles off, 50 miles per hour, risky but necessary, Jida reckoned as she began to think anew. Whew. Okay, Jida, you got this. Just warp without missing a step. The guitarist gently encouraged herself whilst beginning to take a stance. With a slow turn, she drug her foot against the roof's top cement, sparking up a source of energy around herself. Collectively surrounding her body, danced to life stars that only she could see. This ability she had, it was both a blessing but also a burdening memory. It had given her so much, yet took the same amount away. The glowing lines upon her skin then connected together, creating the form of constellations. The world around her then slowed as the stars that surround her body all lined into a trail-like pattern for her to follow, forming their own long constellation shape. You got this, girl. Don't mess up. Her own voice echoed across this subspace-like environment as she got ready to book it. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3. Within a flash, Jida's worldview began to stretch and elongate from her own perspective. It was as though the culmination of her entire being suddenly went forwards at an unfathomable speed, even though she had only been standing in place mere milliseconds ago. Lights of fiery energy whizzed and zipped past the guitarist's body. The stars and constellation-like shapes snapped and morphed into blurry lines as Jida focused her mind solely to the path in front of her. She wasn't walking or running. She was merely transitioning from one place to another through the tetherings of stardust. This was one of Jida's gifts per se, the ability to teleport from one place to the other through a power she didn't understand. She even coined what this power of hers would be known as warping. With a bright flash of orange stars, Jida's world returned as she leapt through the fabric of the building blocks that made up her reality. Landing from the air, she skidded and rolled across another rooftop, still getting back up and running after the chase ahead. Within the near distance, Jida could see the dancing colors of red and blue bouncing off city-side buildings. This wasn't the first time this had happened, and will never be the last. Aurora was like a coin. In the northern half resided the wealthy, the more up-to-date, the proper city, the rich folks, as the citizens of the South called it. Self-entitled brats, Jida muttered, for she knew who was in that escape van. Scalpers, more than likely. Scum of the other side who just couldn't help but steal from the struggling families who couldn't afford to enjoy such a wealthy life. This is what Jida thought to herself, before quickly warping across a gap between a set of tall buildings she ran upon. The girl's cloak danced and twirled in the air. For each warp she made, soft sparks of yellow stardust danced and visually sang upon every leap and skip, only getting the attention of a select few below. With each warp she made, Jida grew closer and closer towards the adversaries, now nearly getting alongside the van above as it continued to flee. From one of the squad cars below, an officer in the passenger seat just so happened to glance his way towards the buildings. He was young, had dark blue skin, and a sharp set of brown hair atop his head. Looking up and back, the rookie had to quickly make a double take upon what his eyes were seeing. In the moon's shimmering lavender light over the city horizon, the cop was able to get a good look at the cloaked being both warping and running alongside them, succeeding to keep pace and miss their speed. The rookie instantly knew who it was. She was a familiar face in the force, if he wanted to be truthfully honest with himself. The mysterious cloaked figure was a vigilante within the city that had been both a nuisance for those who worked in law enforcement, and yet also a helping hand from time to time in other aspects. Her presence had only been known for around 2 years prior to this night. The rich deeply hated her, but the poor, they loved her. The mysterious figure was akin to a Robin Hood type character, dealing with the rich's lack of care in order to help give back to the struggling community. She was simply known to the public as the Aurora Phantom, but many in the South like to coin her as the Cosmic Angel. Slowly turning and nudging the driver officer's shoulder, the rookie got his commander to turn his head, which had red skin, small eyes, and 2 bull horns atop his head. "What, Sangston?" He asked with visible globs of spit flying from his mouth in small rainfalls. Wincing with a disgusted flinch, Rookie Officer Sankson just slowly pointed his thumb towards the window and sighed. She's back, sir. Landing again and again, Jaida's breath began to weigh and her calves had ignited to ironically burn. She was beginning to lose energy. If she didn't stop this now, she wouldn't have enough power to last for the rest of the night. It was time to act and fast. Alright, let's do this! Taking a deep breath, Jaida veered to her left and probably kicked off the building's ledge. Within the air, her cloak danced with the fall, being accompanied by her skin that glimmered with 1,000 little stars that created a light trail behind herself. As she neared the ground, Jaida closed her eyes, focused upon the fleeing van, and warped once again. Within the fraction of a second, Jaida disappeared from sight and reappeared into the back cab of the fleeing vehicle with a loud clang. As the young girl appeared, her body slammed against the cold steel, non-carpeted van floor, until crashing into the back locked doors with a loud thud. Oh! She yelped in pain, before swiftly standing up to her feet. Groaning, Jaida cursed to herself for forgetting that physics still applied to warping. It was a great ability to have, but one that she was still trying to figure out in the long run. For the last couple years, she had these powers, but it was only around 2 years ago when they had fully begun to manifest. Jaida still had a lot to learn when it came to what she could do and couldn't do, and here in that moment was more or less a reality check for entering a moving vehicle without a seatbelt. Ow! Why do you guys always drive like... Oh, hello. Turning her head, Jaida focused her eyes upon two dudes who had been startled to her sudden presence. They wore baggy clothing along with hockey masks to conceal their identities. To match their pathetic coverings, they both gripped a set of heavy metal hockey sticks, albeit shaking in fright. Hockey sticks? Really, guys? Jaida questioned with a disapproving tone, as one of them yelled and swung in a downwards clash. Quickly sidestepping her assailant, Jaida swung herself around and roundhouse kicked the guy in the head. As this man was knocked to the ground, the other came in from behind and attempted to clock her in the back of the head. Just in the nick of time though, Jaida attempted to warp behind him, but suddenly found herself outside and atop the hood of the vehicle. Oh! Shoot! She cursed as the wind immediately kicked up and nearly blew off her hood. Looking upright while gripping the van, she met the eyes of the escaping driver as he stared in complete disbelief at what he was seeing. Beneath the darkened hood, Jaida just stared back and gently waved, with her eyes taking the look of an awkward expression. Hey! Sorry to barge in and stuff, but I don't think all that money and sewing junk in the back belongs to you guys. Jaida said in a disapproving tone without laying her head upon her left hand and pressing her free finger down upon the hood of the vehicle. Just gonna make an assumption here. If you dudes are trying to impress a girl, I can assure you that she won't be impressed with this. In fact, it's kind of pathetic and, illegal. The angel said with a roll in her flaming eyes, attempting to annoy the driver or at least get him to think rationally. You damn witch! The man suddenly screamed as he pulled out a pistol from the passenger seat. Oh boy! Jaida gasped as the man quickly took aim and fired, shattering the front glass window. With a quick roll, Jaida moved her body to the left-hand side of the vehicle. Working fast, she gripped the door handle and barely skimmed the quickly passing road below, having to keep her legs and rear up, causing her to look akin to someone stuck in a cannonball pose. Jeez! Is it so hard to make money normally for you people? Jaida asked, while peeking her head over to look through the passenger side window. You could start a MeTube channel, a fundraiser. Oh, I know! Start a healthy career path. I heard McRonald's is hiring. Turning his weapon, the man shot the passenger window, leaving Jaida to quickly duck and hold on as the glass above her head fully shattered over her body. Get out of here, Phantom! We got this under control! An officer yelled through a megaphone as a cruiser spotlight was shined upon Jaida, who quickly concealed her face from the light. Hey, relax guys, it's okay! I'm here to help! The guitarist replied in a nervous tone, and she turned her back to the police cars with a thudding heart. If you do not refrain from the scene, you will be under arrest! The officer shouted back as the vehicles all swerved around a corner. Pressing her feet down against the door to steady herself, Jida rolled her eyes and focused upon the empty open space in front of the vehicle. At the same time, the angel made a quiet talking motion with her hand, taunting the same words she had heard time and time again for the last 2 years. Blah, 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 you guys say this every week. Now, sit back and let your friendly neighborhood angel do the heavy lifting for you. Closing her starstruck eyes, Jida began to focus and evaluate the move she wanted to go for in order to halt this law race for good. Sparks of both white and orange blazed past her soul, igniting her as she recounted her starting music words. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3. With a sharp warp, Jida teleported herself to be a few yards in front of the van. As she emerged within the air, her body fell down towards the pavement. As it did, she spun herself around and warped again, this time back towards the oncoming vehicle. As she neared, time and space slowed down to a snail's pace. They gave the musician time to evaluate and make her plan. Taking a chance, Jida slid herself across the hood of the escaping vehicle before slipping through the broken open window. Entering into the driver's quarters, she quickly grabbed him by the shirt collar and then in turn brought the man into her subspace field, making him warp at the same fraction of time and speed as her. Jida, with the man now under her arm, proceeded to do the same with the other two in the back, grabbing one under her free arm and kicking the last to be over her shoulder. Jida felt no weight, for within the fabric of space, everything was weightless. Then with one final surge, she warped once more, in turn, clipping each new convict into separate police cruisers. Everything that had just happened could only have taken place within the span of a few seconds, and Jida was feeling the strain, hard. 5, 6, 7, 8! She gasped before focusing again. With one final warp, Jida fell through a gap in space, but didn't land upon her feet. Rather, she hit the building's roof hard. Yelping in pain, she rolled and crashed until suddenly stopping with a hit against the roof vent. Ah! Gasping aloud, she took in a hard breath through her teeth and quickly reached around. With a grasp, Jida gripped her arm, knowing all too well that she had scraped it pretty bad. Ow! She whimpered before standing on her feet with shaking legs. From below, she could hear the sounds of tires screeching and police sirens ceasing. It appeared they had noted their troublemakers had been caught. Slowly, she went to peek over the ledge as per usual, but only quickened her pace as the sound of a loud crash erupted through the chilly night. For a moment, Jai didn't know what had happened, but that was only for a second. It had immediately dawned upon her that she had left one thing in the scuffle: the van. She forgot to stop the van. Shoot! 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 Jida shouted as she quickly ran to the ledge, only to see the escape vehicle upon its side and crash through what looked to have been an apartment complex. It didn't appear anyone was hurt, but Jida couldn't help but kick herself, as she could have easily prevented that from happening. Hey, are you kidding me? While the cops shouted from below, as a few of them looked to her with annoyed and angry eyes, with only one staring in remorse. Looking down on a worried expression, Jida raised her hands in an awkward manner, feeling scared and unsure as to what to say. I am so sorry, the girl yelled back, as her eyes lowered into a nervous, apologetic gaze. Sorry doesn't cut it! Get out of here! We all know you aren't going to stick around for long anyway. Just go! Just go! One of the cops yelled, as inhabitants from the apartment building began to pile out with scared and confused expressions. I'm sorry, I just wanted... Jada mumbled, but quickly found that she couldn't excuse herself this time. That was a whole building that had been severely damaged. If she wasn't wanted then, she surely was now. I just wanted the help, she quietly said whilst backing off into the shadows. Hey, wait! Sangson exclaimed with a reach before the audible sound and orange flash of a warp came from above. You did your best. he said with a drop in his hand, as the whole scene of what happened began to engulf his mind in flashing red and blue lights. Residing in the southern sector city of Aurora, there rested an old, run-down, dimly lit mechanic shop that was nestled atop a higher area as opposed to most of the other crummy buildings in that community. This workshop was situated upon the top of a roadside hill, with several other smaller buildings being situated beside it. This place, that appeared to be on its last few business legs, wasn't the largest stop around, nor would it ever be the fanciest. It had a graying, outer red stone wall exterior, stained yellow glass windows, and a bunch of old tech and rundown parts littering its front. Within the parking lot of this dump heap sat rows of old motorcycles and in-progress car projects, all being cast in a low, dim light that left through the building's disgusting-looking windows. Resting atop the building's roof sat a cheaply made, smashed-together DIY-looking sign, one that glimmered green but had several lights that flickered on and off. Knox Motor Shop, it read, sometimes saying Knox Moose Shop, as the letters T and R flickered on and off more often than others. This commonly led to people mistaking the shop as a dairy store, but in actuality, it was a place for junk parts to go and thrive, or to go and die. Inside, sitting at a countertop, was the one everyone in the area called Knock. He was a bit on the shorter side, only being about 3 feet tall. He had a round yellow head and a body that was clothed in a dirty brown work coat. This had covered an orange long-sleeved shirt that had slight stains of oil. Around his neck, he wore a nice little green bow tie that helped make him look more presentable. At least that's what the mechanic thought it would do. It never really got the attention he had hoped for. Below, he wore dark gray belted pants that ended in a pair of dopey brown shoes. Around the sides and back of his head connected a pair of headphones with a dingy little antenna on its right. For added nerdiness, Knock even had a set of round oval glasses that gently sat over his misshapen eyes, the right being too small and the left too large. A birth defect that really didn't bother him at all too much. Although small, Knock was a spitting image of someone who had the absolute knowledge of craftsmanship. That, and a disgusting amount about fantasy and D&D games. Looking down, the small mechanic scrolled through his phone, his eyes expressed in an unimpressed gaze as news articles and memes glinted past his spectacles. Same old night hours, he told himself, when something caught his eye. It was an hourly headline, highlighted in red. A&N, it said at the top, with breaking news. Clicking on it, the mechanic slowly read through the article, until ending with a sigh. Biting his lip, he leaned back into his seat, and while also scratching his chin. Oh boy, Knock muttered, before adjusting the glasses atop his face. China. He groaned with a concerned attitude towards his little cousin, while proceeding to pinch the skin in between his eyes. As if on cue, an all too familiar noise erupted from outside his shop's window. Knock only caught a glimpse of an orange flash, being followed up by an "Ugh!" as Jida stumbled to the front door sidewalk. Turning his head, Knock watched as Jida quickly stood to her feet and brushed herself off. She was back to wearing her normal attire from that day. However, her sweater was now tied promptly around her waist, revealing the peach-colored tank top within the yellow light. Turning, the girl met Knock's eyes and then awkwardly waved. Giving a smile, she showed off her dopey little braces before trotting up to his glass door, which had the signature, "We are closed" sign, in front and center. With a simple raise in his arm, Knock waved back before shouting, "Doors open!" Nodding in a tired breath, Jida reached forwards and attempted to push her way inside, but quickly found herself knocking and bumping her head into the glass instead. Oh, It's pull now, not push. Remember? Knock reminded again, from what had been a 3-night streak of head bumps, while he eyed Jida down with a raised eyebrow. Ah, right. Sorry. Just a little tired. The musician replied as she first wiped her head's smudge mark away, and then pulled the doors open. Whew. You know, you really shouldn't sit by the window with a "We are closed" sign. That kind of feels like a middle finger towards late-night strollers. The orange-haired guitarist greeted with a calm but weary tone, as she took off her beanie and rested upon a coat rack. Jida, it's 12 in the morning. I would be astonished if anyone came by at this hour. I actually wouldn't be opposed. Knock returned while getting off his chair and rounding to the other side of his front desk. Look, before we get to discussing anything else, I just gotta ask something. The mechanic grumbled as he placed his hands on his back and popped it. Ah! He groaned, feeling the early stages of his 20s creeping in. About? Jida inquired back with a curious stare as they both now quietly made their way towards a workshop area near the back of the building. Narrowing his sights, Knock looked up to his little cousin's face and shrugged his shoulders in a nonchalant way. Oh, you know, I just wanted to ask how the weather was. You know, like, what were you thinking? Rolling his body, Knock practically shoved his phone in the Jida's face, startling her in the process. Whoa, dude, relax. What's... Oh. Setting her sights down upon the screen, Jida read the big bold headline aloud. Phantom busts crooks and apartment complexes. Friend or enemy? Written by the A&N Crime Division. What? Scowling with a tired and annoyed expression, Jida snatched the little mechanic's phone and began to breeze through the article's confines. None of it was good. Nothing in its sea of words was anything positive. There was no uplifting messages, just terms of nuisance, immature nature, and law interference. It even gave cops credit for apprehending the hooks, even though the title said otherwise. Fake news is all Jida could think. This is, I don't, ugh! The guitarist angrily groaned before returning Knock's phone in a hard shove to his chest. That's all you're gonna say? Knock asked as Jida marched her way into his workshop area with steaming footsteps trailing behind her. It was really just a large garage, if anything, full of parts and scrap metal tools. It wasn't a clean sight by any means, but it was a spitting image of someone who really liked vehicles. Someone like Knock. They completely changed the story, calling me the bad guy! Jida barked with her hair steaming as she unhooked her guitar and placed it upon a workbench. There's only one thing in there talking about what I did. One thing that I didn't mean to do. I got shot at for Bee's sake. Jida rambled in rage as she stomped her way over to a shelf full of knickknacks and rusting away parts. Reaching her hands up, she began to move junk and other things aside, rummaging through parts in search of finding a new string for her guitar. Jida, look, I understand what you mean, but how do I word this? Knock replied as he hopped up upon a nearby work stool and raised himself up to meet the guitar, which he could now see had a broken string once again. Maybe you should have just, sat this one out? Knock solemnly suggested as he turned his gaze back upon his little cousin. The officers weren't doing anything. If I wasn't there... Jida retorted with a red rage-induced haze flowing through her orange shines. She was unbelievably angry at the world and at herself for what she was thinking to be some cruel joke by God. But before she could continue snapping back, Jida was suddenly cut off. If you weren't there, I think there wouldn't be a van inside someone's home. Or homes, I should say. Knock boasted with a displeased look and point towards Jida's form. Knock, I didn't mean for that to happen. Jida replied in a much softer and regretful tone. Gently looking over her shoulder, her eyes narrowed down in regretful gaze, as her bad thoughts and anxieties began to arise from the depths. "Of course you didn't. I know you wouldn't have let that happen on purpose," Nock assured Jida from the other side of the room, as he now felt the guitar strings that had a warm residual heat emanating off them. "It's just, I worry about you. You know, you doing these dangerous things at your age is scary. I mean, I'm 21 years old and I can't for the life of me answer the phone sometimes. I can't even fathom what you must be going through these last few nights." Nock expressed with a small chuckle, showing that he wasn't exactly mad, just concerned is all. "If I'm being honest, I'd much rather hear how high school was going than how you dodged a literal bullet. You make any new friends yet in band class? See some boys, perhaps? Some girls?" Knocking aside some more parts, Jida felt her nerves spike through the roof. "Uh-oh," she mumbled while taking in slow breaths. With her shoulders raised and hands clenched in the balls, Jida gently began to make her way towards Nock. The look upon her face was one that said she had something to say, something that probably would make Nock furious. "Well, about that, I kinda dropped out," she mumbled with a nervous smile and a cold sweat dropping from her brow. "Oh, you what?" Nock practically shouted as he flung his head upwards, catching his glasses before they fell and shattered upon the ground. "Look, I know that sounds bad, but let me..." Jida stuttered as Nock walked upon the table and got close to her face. "Explain? Please do! Jida, you were accepted into the best band class in school! I worked my little legs off just to make sure you had enough money to get in! Why? You just started!" Nock asked with a hurt and disbelieving tone in his voice that caused Jida to feel all the more guilty. "It just didn't feel right for me, okay?" The guitarist returned, now being the one to cut off Nock. Turning, she went to another section of the garage and continued searching for a set of wire to help her fix her guitar. The girl's emotions were mixed and jumbled, a common occurrence for kids around her age, the feeling of being both so confident yet scared at the same time. The confusing life of a teenager, especially for a girl. "Look, after the last couple years, I found it to just be tedious with middle school. I can't imagine what it would be like in high school. Besides, I think there's a different path in front of me that I need to follow." Narrowing his eyes, Nock slumped his shoulders, starting to realize where this was going. "Jida, don't tell me you dropped out because..." Swaying her body around, Jida raised her hand up and snapped her fingers, sending small sparks of flames that danced from the fingernails. "No," was all Nock could say as he looked upon her with a growing sense of fear. "Nock, I have abilities that no one in the entire world has. I have a gift. I can put to good use," Jida exclaimed before warping towards Nock and slightly startling him. "For one, I can teleport," she told with a growing smile. "Jida," Nock replied with a nervous wince as his little cousin rambled on. "I can shoot sparks of fire energy from my fists," she boasted, while turning her hands into literal balls of fire. "Jida, can you just... At this rate, I might be able to fly. Maybe I can make fire illusions. What if I can make a motorcycle out of fire?" Jida cut off and theorized with a big dopey grin and giddy flaps with her hands as she bounced up and down in place. "Jida!" Nock snapped aloud, snapping both his palms upon his face. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he asked with furrowing eyes and a tired expression. No, I don't think so, at least," Jida replied before warping back to the rack of parts, searching for extra materials. "So, let me get this straight. You dropped out of high school to be a crime-fighting no-name in a red cloak?" Nock babbled as Jida let out a sigh. "That's exactly what I plan to do. Someone has to protect this unprotected dumpster fire of a city." Jida retorted with a voice now sounding low and hurt when they realized that her cousin wasn't understanding. You're really sitting here and telling me that you'd rather get shot at every night instead of enjoying a normal life? Is that seriously what you're saying to my face right now? Biting her lip, Jida's eyes squinted into an expression of annoyance before she ever so gently glanced over her shoulder. The city is corrupt, Knock. Our side of the curve is riddled with untreated crime. If the law won't step in and make this place better, then I'll be the one to take that step. She muttered before scowling with a newfound sense of anger. And besides, I haven't had a normal life since that night. High school would only lead to even more bullying. And turning around with shaking breaths, the musician locked her eyes with Knox. Both were filled with differing motives and ideas that clashed against one another. I have powers that no one else has, and I won't discard them in favor for some band gig. If they were forced upon me, then I'm gonna make sure I use them every single day of my life. That is final. Do you understand? Jida finished in shaking stutters while crossing her arms in a pained manner. Knock couldn't help but stare in utter disbelief towards his cousin. The words that left her mouth made his stomach churn like a swirling ice cream machine. He loved Jida. They were more like siblings than cousins. So to hear that she wanted to throw herself into danger like that made him feel awful. He knew he couldn't stop her. When Jida set her mind to something, she would rarely back down. Although she knew this, Knock couldn't help but blurt something that made the both of them fall quiet. Do you think this is what your parents would have wanted? The room felt eerily still and quiet as those 11 words reverberated within the garage. Upon Jida's face, her tensed-up eyes, within a flash, gently softened into a blank and saddened gaze, before she simply looked to the side with her head lowering. No, Jida, I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. Knock apologized as he reached out for his cousin. No, it's fine. I get it. She replied, sounding less determined than before. She sounded defeated, broken as a flash of the past rushed into her brain. Adjusting his dopey glasses, Knock simply gazed back down upon the guitar, unsure of what to say. What could he say after striking a nerve that ran deep through both their souls? Jida, it's just, when our families died that night, you were all I had left. I know it's only been a little over 5 years, but raising and protecting you really became my only purpose in this thing called life. Knock quietly said as he returned to the stool seat and opened a drawer. Inside, he pulled out a string and began to rewire the broken piece on the guitar. It's just hard seeing you go in and out the door in that cloak night after night, knowing that you're out there running the risk of being hurt, or worse. Closing his eyes, Knox shook his head and thought about what he would say next in this moment of vulnerability. I just don't know what I would do if I lost you. Looking back up, Jida simply sighed and marched her way around the table. As she did this, Knock was only able to look up for a mere second before she quickly warped towards him and embraced him into a long and tight, warm hug. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. I don't want you to worry. Jida stated as her hair began to glow into a soft and warm shade of orange. But I'm getting older, Knock. You gotta understand that this is my life, my choice. I understand you're scared about me, but there's a part of me, though, that can't help but feel as if this cursed gift of mine has a purpose. I could have died that night, but for some reason, I lived, and I live with these powers. Don't you think that's some kind of sign? Pulling back, the two cousins locked their eyes. Both were tired and strained from the day, but even in that tense moment, they were able to find comfort with one another, being the last members of their family. Aurora is run to the core. Crime runs amok. People are literally dying homeless on the streets. If I just learn and master these abilities, I can help better things. I can help people, provide, do so much. Jada rambled, feeling a wave of good-natured thoughts entering her soul. I can make a difference, not just here, but perhaps anywhere. There's people that need saving, need someone to hope on. And if no one else will be that light, then I'll be the one to step in. Literally. Jada said with a smile as she shined both her hair and eyes upon Nock. I care about our world, and I deeply care about the city we call home. Don't you understand that? After a moment of silence, Nock looked away, but soon turned back with a continued, worrious gaze, but now with an understanding within his eyes. Look, kid, I may never stop worrying about you, about what you do and where you go these nights. But just promise me this, Nock said as he raised his hands and began to fix the top of Jada's hair. Whatever path you follow, wherever the stars may take you, just promise to number one, take care of yourself. Number two, never forget who you actually are underneath that dumb hood. I love you, kid, Nock said as he tried to hold back tears. You're alright growing up and making your own damn decisions. I was around your age when I did that too. Guess it's just hard seeing myself in someone else. Nock finished as he turned his gaze towards the orange guitar. I love you too, Nock, Jada replied as she took note of her now repaired instrument. I promise. I'll be sure to even inform you on what I do if that makes things any better. I swear. Pinky swear, Jada suggested as she interlocked her pinky around Nock's, causing him to crack a smile. I would greatly appreciate that. Finding a new form of common ground, the two backed off from one another and began to feel as though it was time to call it a night. But before they could even bother saying another word, the sound of shaking and heavy rumbling came from above upon the workshop's roof, getting the two inside to quickly hunker down. What's that? Nock asked, as the shelf items began to tumble over and crash into the floor. To the cousin's surprise, a blue light bloomed to life from outside the garage's front-looming window and gave off an otherworldly impression. Whoa! Jada shouted in shock as she held Nock close, fearing that this had been some kind of transformer malfunction mixed with an earthquake. In that moment, Jada warped the two of them to be below the table as a means for safety. Craning their eyes forwards towards this window, they both watched in shock as the blue light suddenly faded, but was replaced with a mysterious hooded figure leaping in the view. Although hard to make out, through the grainy, dirt-stained glass, they could both see that they wore a blue hoodie up and over their head, while even seeming to wear some kind of armor. What the? Jada asked in awe, as her and Nock watched the unknown person flip up and over the workshop fence, and began to descend into the lower sector of the city. Did you just see that too? Nock asked, as Jada continued to stare with curiosity towards the window. Yeah, she whispered back in a more curious nature, as opposed to fear, while her hair began to glow with a crimson flame. And I think I'm about to try and get a closer look, she said with a squint, curious as to who had just entered the home she cared about so dearly.